Today, the Supreme Court is hearing the case of this really interesting story we're going to tell you about. It's a former public high school football coach, okay? His name is Joe Kennedy. Here he is right here. He says his constitutional rights were violated when he was suspended for praying midfield after games. His school district had asked him to stop praying with students and members of the community, which can be seen in many pictures and news footage at the time. Coach Kennedy says every American should be able to have faith in public and not have to be worried about being fired over it. While opponents argued that his prayers were not private, they also noted that at least one player felt compelled to participate and that if he didn't, he wouldn't get to play as much. So, DBL Nation, we want to open up this conversation to you. We know it's nuanced, but we'd love to get your take. What do you think? Should a public school football coach be allowed to pray midfield with players after the game? Go to dblvote.com to weigh in. Jeffrey Schroeder, you played football, and I assume was there prayer? Talk to me about how you feel about this and if you yourself prayed.
And I'm also faith-based, and yes, I did pray. So I played college football 23 years ago. I mean, it sounds crazy. It's a lifetime ago. But after the game, praying was a big part of the game if you wanted to. I shouldn't say, let me take that back. Praying was part of the game if you wanted to partake in that, right? Mm-hmm. So after our game, I'd pray before the games, before I even left the locker room. Went to, wasn't Catholic or anything like that. And after the games, when you're out there trying to kill each other, you'd get together with the opponents, with their coaches, with their staff. It would be a team. If you go back to those pictures, there's both teams are out there.
Yeah, opponents.
It's a good way to be like, hey man, I was trying to kill you out there. You're trying to kill me. Thank God we both have our limbs. We're playing football. Let's enjoy our life. Who led the speech, whether it be our coach, our captain, their coach, it didn't matter. Guys go if they wanted to go. I would be with my friends and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go hit that prayer real fast. I'll see you in the locker room. All right, man, I'll see you out there. I'd go and pray with the guys from the other team, from my team. A good thank you for letting me play college football, having the ability to, and then go on my way. There was no judging whether you should or shouldn't, or if you did or didn't. There was no. So this makes me think there's more to the story rather than just praying.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say, I think the more to the story for me was thinking, like, let's take out players and put in employees. So Jeff, our shift manager, who decides what I get, you know, in terms of when I work, he's starting to pray at lunch. Do I need to pray? What if I'm not of that religion? But what if I start to see that the people that pray with Jeff tend to get the shifts that they ask for? We don't want to go down this road.
But let's go down this road. How is that different than going out for drinks or hanging out with different coworkers? That has nothing to do with religion. It's just where your clique is at.
I get that, but
you can't put it on religion.
No, I'm not putting it on religion.
I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah, but he's in a position of power as the head coach. He can decide who plays and who doesn't, and there might be players that feel obligated to do whatever he's doing, whether it's praying or whether it's getting a beer after the game. Whatever it is, people are going to feel obligated to do that. And when you start talking about religion, it's something intensely personal. You said you prayed before the game in the locker room. I'm assuming even if there was social media, you wouldn't be on your social media. That's something between you and the person that you envision above. And I think when you start making that public, Erica, when you start making that public, you're now opening yourself up to critique, but you're also making people feel like they either feel compelled to do it or compelled to walk away, and I don't think that's fair in public.
Well, I respect what you're saying, Al. I guess my feeling about it is different, and it's more in line with what Jeff's saying, because I went to, both of my brothers played football and other sports. So my sister, was an athlete as well for high school and college, all three of them. And I was on the dance team, and I remember after every game, after everyone had shaken hands and they were going to their respective locker rooms, there would be a circle of faith. Now, that faith could have been any type of faith.
Right.
For most of it, it wasn't necessarily led by a staff member. It was generally led by another athlete who would just open it up to the idea of thanking a higher power, something greater than ourselves. And I've always been a part of that, and I never really even thought about the idea that people would feel like if they didn't do it, then they weren't going to get playing time, because people were like going to the parking lots, and people, like, when we would be done, we'd be the only ones on the field other than like our parents and people waiting for us. So I get what you're saying though, but apparently there have been examples of people who were on his team who absolutely did get the most playing time, or they were brought up to be captains or whatever it was. So I guess there were examples that wasn't actually the intent behind what he was doing.
My question is, what if one of those players or coaches wanted to lead in a teaching of Islam? Like, that would be my question. Do you think that would be received the same way?
And what I'm saying is, in my experience, not in what everybody else's experience was, it wasn't a denomination thing. It wasn't respective to a certain type of religion. Also, I'm a girl who grew up Methodist, and I went to a Catholic university.
However,
so I think about religion a little bit different.
Right. However, and I'll say this personally because it's not everyone's experience. I'm Jewish. We don't kneel. Kneeling is not something we do. We don't pray on our knees. That's something we specifically don't do. That separates us. If I felt that everybody or a lot of people, and they're saying he insisted on fans and students coming together, and they all were kneeling.
You have to be careful with the word insist.
I agree, and it's
okay.
right here
I'm just
in
telling
quotes.
you, yeah.
I agree. I already had this conversation with Michael Dean, because if it's invite, it's different.
Right.
They're saying he insisted, and the whole point of this to me was the man's First Amendment rights taken away for himself to just be able to pray. But was he a coach at that moment? That's the only decision the Supreme Court has to make. Is he a coach when everyone's leaving still? Or is he and part of the school, or is he a human being praying on a field?
Well, the timing and what the responsibility is very interesting, but also depending on where they play, because a lot of schools have they play in community centers or community arenas where a lot of different high schools come to the same place. So is it still technically a school sanctioned, or is it a community property if the game is over and everyone's walking to their car or their respective locker room?
That's what the Supreme Court justices literally have to make the decision on. Is he still a coach and seen as endorsing that one public faith for all of his students, or is he a dude trying to get people together and pray?
But what if he did that in the frozen food aisle at Trader Joe's?
It's the church.
What if he did that same thing?
It's not the same thing, Al.
Can you pray anywhere public?
But here's the thing. Listen, no, I know what you're doing, but I know what you're saying. You make a great point. But this is something like, listen, man, we just killed each other out there. We played a sport. These people came to come see us. Let's give thanks. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Islamic. I don't care what you are. Let's give thanks. It doesn't even have to be to a Lord above. Let's thank each other. Let's thank our coaches. Let's thank the fans that came. Let's take a moment and appreciate where we're at in life, and for our health, and that we could play this beautiful game together and want to kill each other 30 minutes ago, but now we're holding hands in some sort of faith-based prayer. And this happens on all levels, by the way, from little kids to the pros.
But it's interesting that you brought that up, Al, because I remember this so vividly because our former co-host Brandon London and I went out to lunch and we prayed before our meal. And I remember after we were just talking and I was facing the restaurant and people were like, what is going on over there? And I remember feeling like, was that not supposed? And then I'm like, blank these people. Basically, you go from deep in prayer to
But the problem is, that's allowed in a public square. Of course, he should be able to pray. But let's not forget that the church and state are separate. And in school, Supreme Court has ruled that's a slippery slope.
I think that's a really interesting question. Is he still a coach when the game goes? Is he still
the coach, or is he just a normal person? And that's what the Supreme Court will have to decide.
I think this kid stinks, and that's why he brought all this up.
All right, well, let's look at the final vote. Should a coach be allowed to pray midfield with players? 75% of you say yes. 25% of you say no. So strong majority on that. Interesting. Write us in. We'll read your comments.